Hey everybody, welcome back to the group chat where our mantra is peace, love, and understanding. My name is Robby Soave. I'm again filling in as host for today, but we're looking forward to basically the same great conversation we've been having these past several weeks with my terrific co-panelists, Dan Turrentine, a moderate Democrat, Nina Turner, a progressive Democrat, and of course Emma Jo Morrison, a conservative, and of course Emma Jo Morse, excuse me, conservative, of course, and all, and of course our community members. We are so happy to have you with us, and so looking forward to.
Ruh-roh.
Did we lose? Did we
I
lose
think we
Robbie?
just lost. Yeah, we just lost Robbie.
Dan, you
Well,
want
we,
to take over the
we
Yeah,
convo
I'd
for right
love
now?
to. Yeah, absolutely. Robbie was just introducing everybody here, and we thank all of you for coming on today. Obviously, this has been another remarkable week here that has really just, frankly, been dominated still by the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. We are going to kick it off. Let me see. Hold on one sec. I do not have all the elements up here.
I'm back. Am I
Oh,
back?
okay.
I'm sorry, that's really weird. I think I had the internet drop off in my cursed apartment complex. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes. I thought it was a bit or something. It was like, watch me disappear.
If only. No, I'm back here. Thank you for stepping in for the last 30 seconds, Dan. I can still kick things off. Today, we're going to be talking about the continuing media fallout from the really shocking and horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk. The big, most recent development that I'm sure so many people in our audience are aware of is that the comedian Jimmy Kimmel is no longer on the air following a monologue that he delivered earlier this week. Am I on? Can you see me,
Yep.
guys? Okay. Following the Jimmy Kimmel monologue, where he wrongly suggested that the shooter was from the MAGA tribe, we now know that's not true. There's plenty of evidence to show that he had a likely left-wing motivation of not liking Charlie Kirk for having misinformed his. So we're gonna play that clip right now. Let's pull that up. The first element.
New lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
Dan, let's toss it to you out of this.
Yeah, sure. I think we've unfortunately lost Robbie here. So obviously what Jimmy Kimmel said is incredibly controversial. And for those who aren't aware, ABC then, or Walt Disney announced yesterday around 6 o'clock that they were suspending him indefinitely. And this has caused quite an uproar with people on the left saying, and also to add, Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, went on, was already scheduled to be on a podcast and weighed in saying that, the Walt Disney and ABC can kind of do this, quote, the easy way or the hard way, but that it's unacceptable with what Jimmy Kimmel said to lie and mislead the American people. I'm paraphrasing what Brendan Carr said, and that kicked up a whole series of uproar that Walt Disney was canceling Jimmy Kimmel for free speech, accusations that the government was unfairly coercing a private company and trying to have somebody canceled, an entertainer for using humor. And of course, on the other side, people feel like it was just another outrageous example of public airwaves, ABC, leaning heavily to the left. Robby, I don't know if you just heard that, but hopefully I summed it up.
Are you summarizing my position? Because
no, I would never dare summarize your position. But with that, I can kick this off here. My own, 2 cents on this is that, look, what Kimmel said obviously is wrong. I mean, just on the face of it, Robby, you said this in the lead-in. The assassin, the alleged assassin, it clearly was upset about, kind of from left-wing ideology. It appears that he had a transgender partner, was upset with things that Charlie Kirk had said. So that's one, that Kimmel is just flat out wrong. Two, the affiliates who own local TV stations were horrified at these comments because they were, one, wrong, two, just incredibly callous and insensitive to what is going on for tens of millions of Americans. And they protested to ABC. And as part of this, there is one affiliate, Nexstar, who has a proposed $6.5 billion acquisition of a rival broadcaster that will have to get FCC approval. And I think they were aware that this would create a very awkward situation for them with that merger, which is somewhat controversial. A private company has a right to pull the plug, as Walt Disney did. I think it, reminds me of the story of Jay Leno and David Letterman when they were competing for Johnny Carson's seat. And everyone thought it would be Dave Letterman. He had the show after him for years. He was the heir apparent. Leno went around the country to the affiliates and said, my humor is political equal opportunity. His is more coastal and more left. You want me for your audience. And the affiliates went to NBC and said, we want Leno. And obviously the rest is history. I think for the FCC, look, ABC does have a license. Like, the difference between cable and ABC and NBC is they have to have a license. You're supposed to have equal voices when it comes to politics kind of being represented. I don't think anyone would argue that they, as a rule, have not been equal. But at the same time, Kimmel is an entertainer. Like, and the entertainment side historically has, had a little bit more rope in terms of their humor. So, I mean, I think to some extent, private industry can do what they want. But I think when the government steps forward, it does create this awkward dance if you're going to start talking about entertainers, because obviously most of the airwaves in the evening are entertainers, not news.
So Emma Jo, let's bring you in on this. Obviously, conservatives and Trump do not like Jimmy Kimmel and a lot of the late night hosts and have made the media the enemy. Is this going to be the case of like getting too much of a good thing for them, or setting up some system whereby they're going to be punished by future government action?
Robby, oh my God, I can't imagine a future where conservatives get canceled and fired over innocuous statements that aren't even really offensive and are pretty commonly held views. Or I can't imagine a future where conservative media gets ejected from public conversation, like on social media, for instance. I mean, this is so not effective when you're talking to conservatives in terms of this like horrible precedent that's being set. Because what if it turns on you? We already did this. And for that matter, I'm wondering when Jimmy Kimmel is going to get sued for $1 billion for misreporting on a murder a la Alex Jones. So I mean, that we've already been through this hell. And Jimmy Kimmel blood libeled half the country in that segment. And I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about it. And I think ABC has every right to fire him. And I actually think that it's not comparable to what conservatives have been going through over the last decade plus. I was tweeting a bit about this the other day, where when conservatives were getting canceled in the past, again, like, it was over these commonly held innocuous kind of beliefs, or like misgendering someone or something. What people are getting fired for now is celebrating the public execution of a public figure on the right, which Tulsi Gabbard said in the memorial for Charlie Kirk that is the definition of terrorism, and I do not disagree.
Right, and that's the difference. That's the difference that, for instance, JD Vance has said when he said in his remarks earlier this week about canceling, go ahead and report people to their employers if they're justifying death. And okay, I think that is a clear distinction between people who are on board with violence and people who are just merely criticizing Kirk. But I mean, Jimmy Kimmel didn't endorse violence. Now, I don't want to defend him at all because I think he's not funny. And I agree that if they just independently decide he's not making the company money or his comedy's not good, they get rid of him. But under the FCC commissioner, calling on the broadcaster to do the right thing seems, I don't see how you can say that's fine. But, when Obama and the CDC and the FBI tried to get Facebook and Twitter to take down vaccine content or election content or all that stuff, if you said that was bad, as, I did and all the conservatives did at the time, I don't know how you could possibly. It just seems like exactly the same.
Well, and the other issue
the
is
same thing or worse.
The other problem is that they're entertainers, right? And so one of the things that you've always heard from certain, cable channels is our late night is entertainment. It's not news. So when they make comments that are to be charitable half truths, if not untrue, on certain topics, the defense of these cable channels has always been they're entertainers.
And
I know it's not an FCC license. I get that. But the lines are so blurred now from when those statutes were written back in the 30s, which is when the Equal Opportunity Statute was written, that I think it is, if the FCC standard now is anyone who says something about a political issue that is not true, the owners need to do the right thing. I mean, all the cable TV is wiped out.
Yeah.
On both sides of the aisle.
Where do you come down on this, Nina?
It's definitely a slippery slope. I never believed in cancer culture, when the Democrats were doing it. And I don't believe in this right now. You had a Fox News host, and I was looking to pull that up, Brian Kilmeade.
Yeah.
He said, now he's since apologized. Jimmy Kimmel wasn't even given that opportunity. Again, we are blurring the lines. He is an entertainer. We know that comedians take very complex and uncomfortable subjects all the time, and they make people feel very uncomfortable. And the point about whether or not the alleged shooter's partner was transgender, what does it matter? I mean, if their partner was straight, would it make this any better? Charlie Kirk was murdered in cold blood. That's a fact. All these other ancillary things that people in political power and others are using to try to divide and blur the lines is just problematic. But let me just go on back to Brian. Brian said, I wrongfully said homeless persons should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. So you have a man that has a very huge platform that in a very callous way said that homeless people should be injected, have lethal injections. Now, he had the opportunity to apologize. Was that wrong? I would hope that we all would think that that was wrong for him, not just insensitive, wrong for him to say that homeless people should be killed in that fashion. The Republicans' problem here is not just a First Amendment problem. It is also a problem of the accusatory notion that they put forward against the Democratic Party about cancer culture. And some of them, I won't say all of them, are clamoring to cancel other people. So I see you and I raise you kind of thing. I know you are, but what am I? We need some adults to really deal with how we're going to relate to one another. Do we really believe that the First Amendment is there and that people have a right, except for in certain circumstances, to be able to use their First Amendment right? I remember when the KKK came to Cleveland in 1999. I was working for the Cleveland mayor at the time.
Yeah.
And he caught all kinds of grief from people who said, no, you should not allow the KKK because it's gonna be hate speech. No doubt. Like, we can't argue that the KKK uses hate speech. And the mayor said, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and the Charter of the City of Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I and others that the KKK has a disdain for had to be there on the public streets of Cleveland while they spewed some of the most vile, y'all know what the KKK stands for. So what I'm saying is, that are we picking and choosing would be my question that I would love, one of our two-way viewers who are here with us today. Do we pick and choose, or do we believe that with certain exceptions of violence and that kind, definitely that the First Amendment, that people have First Amendment rights?
Well, and that's where the left is getting so fired up, is the hypocrisy of a lot. Yep.
Go ahead, Emma.
Just nobody is cutting off. You don't have a First Amendment right to a late night show. You have the right.
No, it's not the show, but Emma Jo.
No, but it's the marketplace that should dictate that.
I think it's bigger. I believe, now I might be wrong, I think it's bigger than what he had to say. There's when you have the corporate power and political power merging together the way that we're seeing, there's a problem. Lastly, the media is the fourth estate. Now, I know he's not a journalist or anything like that, but we got to think about the role of the media trying to keep us all honest. And I put that in
I think it's helpful to be,
It's not a pro-Trump organization.
But hold on, Emma, is your objection that ABC does not give equal opportunity, or that what Kimmel said is, quote, not true and was a political left-leaning statement?
My objection to what? Jimmy Kimmel?
Because the FCC chairman weighed in, right, saying you cannot lie. Now, that is not in the FCC. What the FCC, where the authority would come from is you have to have equal opportunity, and you could say, ABC doesn't provide conservatives with any outlet, right? I mean, that I think is the most charitable case you could have. But I don't
think you are making an assumption that the comments by the FCC chairman on the Benny Johnson show.
That's all we have to go by.
Had a exact, are the exact reason why Jimmy Kimmel got fired. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that what he said was vile. It was going crazy on Twitter. It got picked up like wildfire and people freaked out.
Yep.
And obviously it was very embarrassing to the company. And I think that had way more to do with what just happened than what the FCC chairman.
So to your
Emma,
point, Joe, I think you're not necessarily wrong on that. And I think it's very possible that taken together, Jimmy Kimmel being not that funny, late night being in decline. Like everyone jumped to say the Stephen Colbert thing was because of the political pressure. And then if you read all the subsequent reporting, it looks like, no, it was actually a financial decision totally independent of the merger. So that's all true. However, I still think it was just irresponsible for the chairman of the FCC to say in a statement in this very kind of mobster threatening way, they really ought to do this because they've got some business before us. They being
Robert, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's we know exactly. Yeah. We can't play no games here. He absolutely put up the signal.
Yeah,
and it's intimidation, and it's wrong.
Right. I mean, I agree with you, Emma Jo, that the marketplace, I think, in the big picture. But we'll
never know that, though, will we, Dan?
Right.
If Jimmy Kimmel was an asset to the network, if Jimmy Kimmel had a broad,
they didn't fire him. They didn't fire him. They've suspended him.
Company. I think that they would have told the FCC, we're not firing this guy because you didn't like his joke.
But hold on a second. They have business. Nexstar has a $6.2 billion takeover offer that needs FCC approval of Tenga. Right, the rival broad. There's three big ones. Sinclair's the other one. Everyone knows that is a very controversial acquisition because you are shrinking the marketplace, right? It is reported by business press, a lot of reputable places, that when Paramount was being sold to Skydance, the FCC was very clear that you guys needed to make some things politically right. So do you think that Bob Iger of Walt Disney, in his head, and Nexstar, the owner of some of these affiliates, did not think that when the FCC chairman said that, we may have a problem business-wise?
Okay, I mean, that's possible, but now you're departing from the FCC, threatening Disney on, the Benny Johnson show, which is where we started with this conversation. Is it possible that these companies are making decisions about the talent that they put on and who irritates people who are relevant to them making more money? For sure, of course. But do you not think that Mark Halperin would also be, making the same considerations if he was trying to make a business deal and I was somebody who got under the skin of the people he was trying to make a deal with or whatever? What we started talking about here was that the FCC chairman threatened the company on the Benny Johnson show, and that's why Jimmy Kimmel got fired, which I think sounds preposterous.
He didn't get fired. We need to be careful.
He's suspended. Before Jimmy Kimmel on
and
vacation.
ABC says they wanted anonymous people are telling the Wall Street Journal. ABC wants to bring them back.
Right.
So that is a big difference. Yeah,
they're scared.
So I can shed a little more light.
Persona non grata because he did something so awful, and this is
so Emma Jo, was it equally awful for Brian to say that homeless people? So why isn't he fired? Why isn't he suspended? Why isn't he suspended?
Of consistently saying
why isn't he suspended?
Emma Jo.
Brian, yes, he does. Yes, he does.
There is two.
Yes, he does.
Let me.
Are you going to say that Brian Kilmeade gets bad ratings?
Hold on a sec. That is the marketplace. That is not the FCC.
The marketplace did not.
Okay, one at a time. Nina, go ahead.
I don't believe that the marketplace. We won't know because of the way the FCC chairman weighed in whether or not purely. I'm going to concede a little bit to your point, Emma Jo, but we will never know if the FCC purely, not the FCC, ABC purely did this for corporate or economic reasons. We just won't know this because of what the FCC chairman said.
But by your standpoint,
hold on, Dan, hold on.
If you have high ratings, it's okay.
It's hold on. It is also important to hold on. To differentiate between Fox and ABC because they're under different
licenses. I get it.
Is a cable channel.
Licenses.
ABC is on regular airwaves. So the statute from the FCC's perspective, there's it has to be in the public interest. Now, I think that definition is being expanded too much if you're getting into individual editorial choices. But it is true from a regulatory standpoint, there would be less reason for the FCC to do anything about what Fox says because you're affirmatively
they can't.
That.
Yeah,
right?
they can't.
I'm talking about the FCC. I'm talking about businesses act in their interest, period. Businesses act in their interest, period. This is obvious. They are
rational. But should corporate and political power, corporate and government power merge like this?
If Brian Kilmeade was consistently hurting Fox as a company, I guarantee you Brian Kilmeade would also get suspended. Jimmy Kimmel has not been an asset for ABC, which is why I think he's suspended now. It was the straw that broke the camel's back when he's called MAGA. He said the murderer was MAGA. I think that really upset people, and it really embarrassed the company for the final time.
It upset the president, too.
Yeah. All right, let's bring in our first community member. Sharon, we'd love to hear from you. Can you step up and unmute yourself?
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. The first thing I want to say is this has been, I think, the most emotional week in my life. And Dan, I really want to say thank you for everything that you've brought to this two-way community. It's really had a sense of balance and sanity. I'm a firm believer that for a healthy society, the right needs the left and the left needs the right. And it's not Democrat or Republican. It's the left can go to extremes, the right can go to extremes. And for a healthy society, we need to be able to listen to both regardless of what side we're on. So I really wanted to say thank you, Dan.
Oh, thank you so much.
Because I can see the pain in all of you. This isn't like the way it's portrayed. Like, there is no pain in Jimmy Kimmel's face, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I can see the pain on everybody here that this has been a tough week. My question to you, though, Dan, is when you're talking about, and I don't even know if to call them legacy media or corporate media, they're definitely not dominant media, but how is the Democratic Party going to balance, because they're so closely connected? I think most people that don't follow politics hear things from the ABCs, the CNNs, and they correlate it with the Democratic Party. And there's been some wild stuff said since Charlie Kirk's death, and the only Democratic elected leader that has come out and said, this is nuts, is actually John Fetterman. And this has hurt the Democratic Party, I think, since 2016. It's a double-edged sword. It's great that Kamala Harris wasn't in the barrel during this election, but the rest of the country looked and said, okay, up until 2 minutes ago, y'all thought she was an idiot. And now the media is like, she's our rising star. I think this hurts the Democratic Party when they can't come out and say, we don't believe this. And they're afraid to. I don't understand it.
What do you mean when you say this? What do you mean?
Well, there was an ABC journalist, a journalist on ABC News, not Talent, who, after they read the charging documents and those text messages, he was reporting the news that this was a touching love story, which is completely preposterous. Like, if I was a Democratic elected official, I would be like, well, that's not what we believe. And all the people that are like free Luigi and people that are like Luigi is our hero because he killed the CEO, the Democratic Party is afraid when the media covers this, instead of being horrified that there are people out there that are celebrating murder, the CNNs, the ABCs, they're almost kind of condoning it. And again, Fetterman is the only one I've ever heard come out and say, I don't believe this. So I do think there's this weird connection between the Democratic Party and the media, and it's a double-edged sword that I think they're going to have to figure out.
Well,
yeah. Dan, how do you think the media or the Democratic Party really has reacted so far? And is it, I sometimes think, to give my own very brief take, that the Democrats are done no favors by certain people in the media who are have put themselves forward as interlopers and surrogates for the Democratic Party, and when the Democrats would like to say no thanks. But what do you think?
Well, I think, Sharon, first off, thanks for coming on and thanks for your incredibly kind words. I think a few things. One, almost every Democratic elected official has come out to condemn the violence and the killing of Charlie Kirk. They have, right? Elected officials. Not every single, I think Ilhan Omar might be the one who was not quite as forward-leaning. But I think the party has, and I think sometimes people conflate the few examples that are brought up online with the many to say, like, the whole party thinks that way. But I think where the party is not well served, to your point, is that there has been this linkage for the last, 50, 60 years between, what we will call the mainstream media and the Democratic Party, where there's an echo chamber and a bubble of talking to each other. And what still, I think, is the case for the Democratic Party today and for most of the media is, if I had $1 for every time I heard somebody say, even up until today, I don't understand how anyone could vote for Donald Trump, I would be one of the richest men in the world. And I think there are a lot of Democrats and people in the media who still look with a lack of respect at Trump voters. And therefore, you can make these kind of callous, offhanded remarks of like, they're idiots. If only they actually knew the information, they wouldn't think this way or act this way. And that lack of respect has been a huge problem for the party to move forward, because they still think we got to break the fever dream of Trump, as opposed to, why does he have so much staying power? Why is he so effective? And why do tens of millions of people vote for him and like him? And that,
they ran on that, Dan. Democrats ran on that, and that was wrong. You can't it can't just be about what you're against. It has to be what you are for. And certainly, I would say mainline Democrats, who have most of the power within the Democratic Party, Sharon, in my opinion, went too far on that, lacked vision, was talking about Build Back Better when people couldn't afford groceries, and telling people, don't believe your pocketbooks, believe what we're saying to you that the economy is better. Just totally disregarded what the American people were saying was happening to them in their very own households in 2024, and lacked a vision and thought that they could just ride on being anti-Trump instead of showing the American people why they would be the better leaders. They didn't do it, and I agree with Dan. They're still talking that smack even to this day. Have not all, but many of them who are in control of the apparatus of the Democratic Party. Because I believe the Democratic faithful, they're different than the leadership of the Democratic Party. Sharon, some of them still just don't get it. They don't get it. And it's really shameful. I agree with you that when we have disparate views, not views that hurts people and make people feel less than, but having those different views that we can debate within the public square is healthy. If we have two strong parties, I wish we had more than two, quite honest, Sharon, because I don't know how you put over 300 million people in two parties, but I'm gonna put that in the parking lot. There is something wrong with the political elements right here, and we must reject, we must all reject political violence, period. And I hope that people from different sides can we just agree on that point? Because I didn't see this kind of outcry when the Speaker of the Minnesota House was assassinated, Melissa Hartman. It wasn't this kind of stuff, and her colleague was assassinated. I'm not saying that people shouldn't have, those feelings that they have for Charlie Kirk. All I'm saying is that if we are against American on American violence, if we are against political violence, then I would like to see President Trump have used some of the same energy that he has for Charlie Kirk, even though I know they had a relationship, but for when the Speaker of the House and her colleagues were assassinated. Now are we going to be consistent on this, or are we going to be hypocrites?
Yeah, I'd actually particularly like to hear from some of our community members on that, how they feel about the reactions from both parties. Are they, happy about what they're hearing from Trump and Vance and from National Democrat? Because we are all emotionally affected by this. I was on 2A a bunch of times last week, in addition to the group chat, feeling, not that I wasn't emotionally affected in the first place, but feeling like emotion via osmosis from how clearly affected by this really shocking murder everyone was. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. Emma Jo, I'll go to you next. The right is obviously not just the right. Everyone's hurting from this, and a lot of ideas are being thrown out. Now, not all of them are good. Pam Bondi, for instance, immediately made a comment about hate speech that, like, everyone on the right was like, no, Madam Attorney General, we have been fighting for years to get this distinction between words and violence, and not this, don't give me this, hate speech is not free speech, and she had to walk it back. So I thought that was a kind of healthy reaction. Actually, I think we have one of those, the Pam Bondi clip, and then I'll get you to react to it. Can we play that element real quick? That is element 6.
Free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society. And I think what Erica said is they had no idea what they unleashed by doing this around this country and around this world. How so many more conservatives, I think, who are quiet are going to come out and be so outspoken. They thought they could silence Charlie, and it was the opposite. His word will be heard far and wide now.
Emma Jo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that even meant. I want to be charitable and say that she didn't mean that, like that she misspoke or something. Because, I mean, it's not like she was under a rock for this job. Like, she was contributing media constantly. She wasn't out of the loop. And she obviously knows that, I mean, not only conservatives, I think if you surveyed everyone on this panel, we might all agree, I think, on one thing, which is that hate isn't real. Yeah. And I know, Nina literally talked about the Klan marching through her town recently. Like, that's preposterous. So I want to say that Pam Bondi misspoke. I want to say that she had really studied up before she did that podcast in terms of, what the thinking is. I think of senior people in the administration and what the thinking is in terms of where the administration wants to go in terms of action items after Charlie's passing. That's definitely not one of them. I like to think that what she meant was going after violent hate groups in the country that don't use hate speech, but actually act and hurt people, namely Antifa, which Trump obviously designated as a terror organization some like 24 hours later. So I think
Well,
that's
I mean, I think the challenge for the White House is going to be that, like you mentioned, Nina, about the Klan coming to Cleveland, right? It's the Associated Press and several news organizations are now reporting about this black student in Mississippi, college student, who was found hung from a tree.
Absolutely.
Now, no one has said what
play.
happened. They're doing an autopsy right now, right? Could be that he committed suicide by hanging himself from a tree. No, hold on.
Dan.
No, Nina, let me finish because I think we're aligned. I don't believe that is the case. His family doesn't believe that is the case. The number one source of domestic terror, according to the FBI for the last decade, has been white nationalists. We all know that the KKK historically has done things to intimidate the black community. If this turns out to have been a lynching, which is what there are, we'll see what comes out. I will be very curious if Pam Bondi in the White House is going to come down like holy hell and pursue the Ku Klux Klan.
Are you kidding? If there was a lynching, a man was hung from a tree, and that was a hate crime, Dan, you think that Pam Bondi and the Trump administration would be chill about that?
I didn't say be chill.
They are. He said he wonders
what I'm
if they're
saying is, will they go after the Ku Klux Klan nationwide, right? Because again, if any sort of intimidation and violence is unacceptable, and we know the history of this stuff, you're shaking your head.
Because Dan, I'm sorry, but I'm struggling with this a bit because I'm assuming. Listen, I hadn't seen you there, so it's possible I'm wrong. But I'm assuming that you haven't attended many conservative social events since 2015, 2016. If you had, you would know that there were gangs that would constantly be standing at the door to the extent that the locations of these gatherings could never be announced until the day of, in some cases until some hours before. There would be gangs of people in all black, ski masks on, and they were called Antifa, and they were there to beat the shit out of every single person at that party. And they did do that. There was an incident when I just moved to New York when I was like 23, and a guy got his head kicked in on the cement.
Okay, but so you're not answering my question.
No. So this is a group that appears like everywhere conservatives are. It's a group that conservatives have to take precautions to protect themselves from. Like, of course, if there was a hate crime where a boy was hung from a tree because of his race, that would be charged as a hate crime. To compare that now to say, oh, if they're going to go after Antifa, then they have to treat this as if the Ku Klux Klan is back. Listen, if the Ku Klux Klan starts showing up and hanging black people around the country, or even let's say more than one time, I would imagine that the government would freak out and absolutely pursue them as a terrorist organization, which they are already designated as.
But Emma Jo, do you think Antifa or the Ku Klux Klan has more members nationwide?
Well, hold on. And the problem with that is Antifa is not enough of a organization. Like Antifa is not an organization to the extent that it has a membership roster and a leader. Antifa is almost more of an organizing tactic, I would say, involving what Emma Jo describes: people who wear black masks, who practice violence, who believe in norms of violence, who fight with people in the streets of DC. I've witnessed it happening. I would say that people should be stopped and arrested and prosecuted for committing violence, regardless of what group they belong to, or regardless of the person they're targeting with the violence. If that incident that you described with the person hung, if that was a racially motivated hate crime, it doesn't matter to me if it's racially motivated or not. If it was perpetrated by someone else, they should be in jail for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
I think that's how most Americans.
It is the FBI for a decade. I said the number one terrorist threat in this country is white nationalism.
Well, the difficulty with those...
Hold on. If you are going to go after everybody, and the federal government is calling all forces to attention to stop intimidation and violence, politically oriented, then how can you not go after the number one threat of domestic terrorism?
We're not going after. We're not doing everybody, Dan. We're not doing everybody.
I want to get Nina's perspective on this. My caveat to the statistics. I know the ones you're referencing. I went very carefully through the Anti-Defamation League statistics, for instance. And one of the issues is that, right, the politically motivated violent crime by white supremacist gangs is prison gangs killing each other, it's domestic violence or other crime that is by white supremacists, but is not the violence itself is not for white supremacist reasons, which maybe that feels like not an important clarification, but I think actually is an important clarification, because it's not these people going out and committing ideologically motivated violence. It's the people who are in white supremacist gangs are violent people. A
man threatened Mandami, who was arrested today by the NYPD out of Texas, for saying you don't belong in this country. And if you don't be very careful starting your car. Right? And he was arrested. Now, hold on. Do you think it's because of who Mandami is? He didn't say because you want to raise taxes.
Like someone does a crime, so now we have to treat it like we're going after Antifa. That's it.
Well,
all right, let's get Nina. Nina, go ahead. Nina, go ahead.
Antifa certainly is not, and I want to apologize to the two-way community. I'm traveling, and my space is certainly active. So if you hear a background noise, it is people in this wonderful restaurant getting it set up to open. So just bear with me. Trey Reed was lynched, and I'm gonna guarantee you, Black people not going out into trees and lynching themselves. The KKK was a terrorist group, the White Knights, terrorist groups. There have been thousands of Black people lynched over the course of the history of this country. After the Civil War is when this stuff really started. In other words, after Black people were no longer enslaved, after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to the Constitution. Many of these things are not documented. But let me get back to this. Dan, thank you for bringing up Trey Reed, because I wish that we were talking about him. And then there was a white man lynched in Mississippi too. So the problem is political violence of any type should not be acceptable. And we know that there are special categories in this country for racialized political violence, mainly because of the chattel slavery that happened in the United States of America. But we have got to agree, I would hope that we would agree that political violence in any of its forms, and that's why I keep pressing upon this, is absolutely not acceptable. And so I think what Dan is saying is that it remains to be seen whether or not the president and his administration are going to show the requisite energy towards trying to figure out what happened to Trey Reed, trying to figure out what happened to the white guy in Mississippi. To this point, they have not shown the same energy regarding the assassination of the two political or elected senators in Minnesota who were assassinated. So we shouldn't pick and choose. Life should be precious, whether I agree with your political views or not. Life is precious.
Yeah. All right. Let's get one of our community members who's been waiting a long time. We appreciate your patience. Aaron, say what's on your mind.
Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. So obviously a lot of stuff going on. So have thoughts about all of it, but not all my thoughts are important. As far as the response of the Republican and Democrat parties to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is it's just so heartbreaking. I have 3 kids as well, and just can't imagine what my wife would be going through. But it seemed like to me that you have, the people that are elected in the party that are in power, and then you have all of the people who are kind of surrogates of the party. So for the Democrats, then that's obviously going to be the media, Hollywood types, and different things like that. The surrogate people on both sides are going to say crazy stuff all the time, with every event. And so I'm just kind of comparing it in my mind to what happened to George Floyd, and President Trump did not come out in any way bashing George Floyd or anything like that. He, if I remember correctly, then he was pretty much standing on his side, saying that what happened to him was wrong. And he was calling out the people that were saying the opposite. Not every day, but that's what's happened. I just don't see that from the Democratic Party coming out and saying not only is this wrong, but no matter where this man picked up his rhetoric and his ideas, that is wrong as well. Even if it's on our side, then we have to deal with it. And then there was as well the surrogate responses were having candlelight vigils. I just got an email from somebody who's on base close to me. There's a Charlie Kirk vigil tonight, and they've sent out a warning to everybody on base, like, you can't be in uniform. There's threats of violence against this place. If anything happens, please leave immediately. And whenever all the stuff happened with George Floyd, then I was a Democrat at the time and was marching in the BLM marches, then Antifa and all them were, not George Floyd, right before George Floyd with Michael Brown and all that. Then Antifa and them were the ones burning down the buildings and all of that stuff. So trying to compare Antifa to right-wing stuff is so strange to me. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but Antifa has been committing violence for years. And it seems that this man was at least copying their rhetoric on his bullets and things like that. I mean, is it unreasonable to say that it's time to deal with Antifa, and say, well, okay, we got to go after the white nationalists, which I think we should always go after the white nationalists. Why not? But it's not like after George Floyd died that the white nationalists were burning stuff down and making threats against people. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say there?
Nina, go ahead.
I definitely understand what you're saying, even though I disagree with you. George Floyd was not. First of all, George Floyd was killed by a police officer, murdered in cold blood. That's number one. Number two, George Floyd was not a political figure. So I think there's some conflation here, Aaron. I just want to draw your attention to that. We have the FBI director who was asked the question, did he know who Dylan Ruth was? And he said he didn't know. Now, I don't believe that he didn't know who Dylan Ruth is, actually, who went into a black church and killed black parishioners. Definitely race motivated. So I'm bringing that up as an example to say that I think we're falling into traps here. We should be, my opinion, against political violence in all of its forms, right? We should be about the business of helping people secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Once we get into your side did this, your side did that, that's where this is coming out. Every Democrat, as Dan noted, that I know of leadership role, for the most part, came out and has said something. Senator Bernie Sanders even did a video.
A beautiful video.
About it. But it's not a but. And I would like to say that other individuals who have been victims of crimes similar to this, maybe not exactly like this, have not gotten the same amount of attention. And I'm not saying that Charlie Kirk should not get this attention. What I am saying is that we ought to be consistent. If we are against political violence, then we should be against political violence.
I mean, there's some...
hope, Aaron, I'm making some sense there too, especially with the George Floyd.
The
Charlie Kirk and George Floyd were not the same.
The attention that this is getting has, something to do with the fact that Charlie Kirk is such a huge, important political figure, and also that the footage of his horrific assassination was on social media. Many of us have seen it. Things that have images associated with them stick around. It's just how our brains work. We've had other attempted political assassinations. Obviously, we've had people horrifically wounded, like Gabby Giffords. We had, Trump coming this close to just being dead, but we have not had a person of this high profile status in America actually be horrifically successfully assassinated in like a long time, which is why I think,
I was going to say, Robbie.
And I don't even think this is the first
deal.
internet modern era assassination, right? I mean, even if Gabby Giffords, thank God she survived, but if there had been someone with a cell phone camera that had seen the bullet, someone put a thing and blood come out of her head, I think we would feel very differently. This was the first. of the modern era. And unfortunately, it probably will not be the last worldwide where cell phones capture something.
If I understood, I thought that I understood something different from Aaron. Maybe I thought Aaron was talking about Antifa and the comparable like reactions to things on the right versus the left, comparing the incident of George Floyd and the incident of Charlie Kirk's murder.
Well,
Right.
look, I'll say this on George Floyd. I think our party paid a price for the images that came out of Portland and other places in 2020. The DCCC, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, did a series of surveys after 2020 about why did they not win as many House seats as they thought they would. And one of the things that came up over and over again in certain districts was that the images of what the voters saw as looting and burning and chaos scared them about the Democratic Party, because they kept saying in these focus groups, Democrats did not condemn it, right? There was a sense that we condoned the emotional response to George Floyd that came about in those cities. And so I do think that in that instance, we should have said rioting and looting under any circumstances is not acceptable. But I think one thing, and Robby said this, Antifa, to my knowledge, is not a cohesive, organized, perhaps we will learn something different, group that is out there, this idea that George Soros funds it, and it's some sort of, cabal that's out there intentionally doing stuff. It is, to my understanding, more of a loose organization. Perhaps we'll learn otherwise. But as Nina said, and I think this is where I come down to, and a lot of Democrats have, is just all violence, political violence, needs to be stopped. And Democrats should call it out when it's on our side, and we should hold the other side accountable to say, as should you. And that's where when they've had the opportunities, they pivoted to say, and Trump famously said it on the circular couch at Fox, well, our side is fighting for kind of like good policy. It's that side whose fighting is bad. And that is what I think Democrats just wanted to rip their hair out.
I sort of hear what you're saying, but I think the point that Aaron was making, that I understood at least, was that the conservative Charlie Kirk was a hero. Charlie Kirk was a hero of our movement and of conservatives. Everyone, no matter what age, virtually looked up to Charlie Kirk. There was so little, and he was such a reasonable conservative too, while not sacrificing on the values of the movement. He was a unique figure in the movement. His loss is catastrophic. It's still unimaginable. It's still, the group chats are still, I can't believe he's gone. It's like that. People are still shocked. I can't describe to you, because there is no comparable figure on the left. And I think that, anyway, what Aaron was saying, as far as I understand, which is the truth, is that despite how much he meant to conservatives, there has not been a napkin set on fire in any city in America. It's been prayer vigils. It's been gatherings to commemorate Charlie. It's been gatherings to praise the Lord. His wife saying God is good, standing up and saying God is good. That was his wife's comment, is, I don't understand, but Jesus Christ has a plan. I'm pretty sure what Aaron was talking about was that, and highlighting that. And again, you and I, Dan, kind of traded barbs on this last show. And I think we're there again, where I'm like, what would you like for us to tone down and condemn?
I think so in my opinion, there's two different statements there, right? One is the reaction to Charlie Kirk, right? I get why his impact to the movement, why people feel so emotionally devastated, and the response, as you say, that the right has had. And if you want to compare it to the Black Lives Matter, to George Floyd, you are correct. I also believe that Nina and I are correct, that where there are instances of violence in the other direction, there is nowhere near the same energy. It's just that he matters to Donald Trump and the conservative movement. So it's personal for them. But the energy should not be, well, if he's important to me, then we're really energetic. But
so that the right is now being condemned for not having an outpouring of anger and grief over every single act of violence in the country?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, I think what Emma Jo is going to get at is that there's a lot of conservative frustration about all kinds of violence. I mean, you saw how worked up conservatives were, especially about Irina Zarutska, someone they had never heard of before,
But
and
that
doesn't
was not
necessarily even
political
have
violence.
That isn't, that's actually not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the expectation that we have to, each conservative has to come forward on Twitter and post, and we have to keep up with every crime that happens and
No, of course not. Of
denounce
course
it.
not.
No, like it's just about Charlie and what I think what's
No,
going
but
on
I think
and we're not happy about that.
I
All right, we got to get one more. We have to get one more community member before we wrap here. Anthony's been waiting a long time. Anthony, why don't you tell us what's on your mind? Weigh in here, please. Unmute first.
Hi, Nina. Hi, everybody. So, I guess you guys already know I'm a left-wing independent, and I think I have an interesting take here. So, I kind of more agree with Emma Jo on this, and the reason why I do is because Robert Pape, who's been on the show, other shows before, talked about how, according to his data, 39% of Democrats who support political violence support violence, specifically in assassinations. There's also been data I've heard about how young liberals, specifically on college campuses, are more likely to feel that they need to shout down a particular speaker when they say things that are quote unquote hateful, whatever that means. And as someone who personal experience I've had is even as someone who doesn't have like is not a MAGA or Trump supporter in any way, I've known people who even if they're more center right have said that are sort of afraid on college friends of mine to say that they're a conservative or a traditional conservative, whatever you want to say. So, and yeah, I don't think Antifa is this organized threat or whatever it is, but I do think the fact that you have more lone actors that hear the rhetoric that Trump is Hitler, that Trump's a fascist, those people, because we hear this every single day from the Democrat Party, not just people online, but people say Trump's an existential threat to democracy, Trump is Hitler, Trump is a fascist. And sadly, that galvanizes crazy people like this Tyler Robinson dude to do acts of violence. That's just all I'm going to say. So you guys can respond to that.
I think you make great. I mean, look, I agree with you that when you say that something is so existential, like if this election, like he will destroy our country, destroy democracy, crazy, I do agree. And I think that, again, when Trump says, if we don't win, we're not going to have a country and they are going to destroy it, crazy people hear that and think, I have to do my part to stop them. And I totally agree with you again. And I've been really consistent. We as a party need to stop saying that. But I think my point here, and this goes to what we're talking with Emma Jo, is where there has been frustration is this sense of when people have said, hey, everybody needs to tone it down. It's like, oh, no, we don't. You guys need to tone it down, as opposed to we all need to look in the mirror that these times are so charged that acts, whether it's death or like Paul Pelosi, you skate death. It's not good.
Yeah, my reaction to that.
Violence is bad. I'm just trying to understand, and I keep asking you this. I'm not, God forbid, Dan, God forbid there would ever be any violence. I hope that all violence becomes obsolete forever, obviously. But I keep trying to get to the answer here, which you don't seem to want to give me, which is
what's that?
Specifically, what has the right? What should we condemn? I keep asking you what would you like us? What would you like the right?
So I'll give you the examples of when the violence has been against the left. Republicans, some of them have not said anything. When Paul Pelosi was hammered, Don Jr. cracked jokes on X.
The Paul Pelosi example, to be fair, is, in my view, the best counterexample.
And Donald Trump did not have a lot of nice things to say online either, and made jokes about it.
There was joking about an old man being attacked.
But Emma, but rather than going down, I'm not trying to go down the rat hole of Paul Pelosi. You asked me, what would I like to hear? Instead of flipping it again and constantly saying, our side has doesn't do anything, it is strictly a your problem. That is where we say, you got to be kidding me. There is violence on both sides against the other. In this instance, Charlie Kirk was murdered live on, social media.
Instance of radical conservative violence against the.
We're gonna have to wrap up.
Minnesota.
Thoughts here, people.
Full stop. Minnesota.
That guy was appointed by Tim Walton. There's no motive that's been identified. There's very little information about other than that he was a Democrat. He was not a conservative. He was a pro.
His statements were totally about. That's just not true. That's just not true.
Nina, why don't you give us some parting thoughts?
The human condition, I just want to say the human condition, we can be incredibly beautiful and wonderful to each other, and we could be incredibly cruel. I think we want to try to get as close to beautiful as we can. So,
and we've got some nice exit music. I see your circumstances to kind of take us out of here. I think that's a perfectly good note to end on. Thank you all so much, and thanks to our community members for asking great questions, and we hope to see you back here next week for the group chat at the same time. See you then, everybody. Bye-bye.